Yes, it's come on. Didn't last time. Um, uh, she's asleep. And me talking is as much disturbing her as I'm willing to do, so I don't want to put the camera right in front of her face or anything. Um, yeah, that's been. This is about working class does not require a political vehicle. Um, I think political vehicles become corrupt and become in it for themselves. So we don't want that. We don't want a party. A vehicle I'm meaning here is a party. At the moment, at least, that's the main thing that comes to mind. The political vehicle, and I certainly don't think um, that Labour are a political vehicle for the working class anymore. Certainly aren't at the moment. Um, and I think who in the right mind wants a vehicle? I'm more like a modern day about comparing the intellect level, obviously. I think it was like a modern day Tolstoy. I think of myself like that. Well, like I just said, I don't think of myself on his intellectual level, but just the same sort of views that I see expressed. I've got a political ideologies book in there. Um, could I think I gauge it as something like first year uni level. I would think it comes across to me as, and it discusses Tolstoy. So I haven't read one piece or anything. I mean, I don't want to. It sounds like it lasts forever. Perhaps the sorry. So what I want is to extract power away from like those who have that power at Westminster. If you're American, you'd think Washington. We extract power from them not to harm them, but for our own class interests, which are needs as opposed to wants. There's no excess here. There's no excess in needs. There's no excess is what corrupts. I think. I mean, if the working class just were like starting to like just take over Westminster and things like that, and just like invading it, then obviously that would corrupt the working class. The only demographic that has any reason to dislike us are power hoarders. Those are already who um who are corrupted, I would say, by power. Now, just getting my notes because I've noted all this down. Now, those who have reason to dislike us, then part of the monopoly, I say, the monopolistic Westminster power, that they're opposed to spreading power, for concentrated power, and we would end. Well, I would see the working class's job as to end that centralised cartel monopoly. Now, I don't see any other way of getting anything of the out of so-called democracy. I don't think it's very democratic. Um, we've had nothing since 1945, I think, and that is not a good advertisement for our system. I don't think. Now, had they democratised, decentralised, sorted themselves out, I won't be thinking like this. Like, because what I'm implying here is like we almost have to go online when there's a Labour government and bring pressure on them to sort of like give up to us, surrender to us, sort of thing, in the sense of like, well, we're going to lose all our support if we don't give them what they want. And that's really a crappy way to go about it, but it's their fault. It's their fault for not democratising, not for not decentralising, and so forth. You can say, well, it can't be Labour's fault because I've Tories for the last 13 years. I had Labour before then. I just think it's a cartel. I don't think there's that much difference between the two at all. Apples and it's apples and oranges, and it's because power corrupts. So it's because the people. It's not because they're genetically evil. um, so But the way we've got to go about it is hopefully we'll wake them up to the fact that they have to democratise the state rather than just accept a new existence as being subordinate to us. But in this way, no longer would a 0.0000001% clique who are beholden to a 0.0001% of billionaire capitalists hold power. No longer would Rupert Murdoch types hold on to a megaphone so tightly that would consider, well, Rupert Murdoch to be a not so secret dictator of the UK until he dies aged 100 plus. Yes, no longer would this Orwellian dystopia destroy Britain effectively. I mean, I destroy Britain in terms of, well, I think we've had nothing since 1945. That's a disaster. I mean, that is what I mean by destroying Britain. The more people who think like I do there, that the government doesn't exist to help its people, at all. Well, the more people who think like that, the more chance there is of a revolution or something. So what I want to replace just the power hoarding with is principle of equal voice, economic merit, economic equality, and for those things to become the new norm rather than power and control being the norm. And propaganda from the news media. I don't want that. So in practice, this means kicking the Tories out. And two, the working class forcing Labour, i.e. Labour are continuity Tories or red Tories, forcing their hand on power. Now, I might think, well, why can't you force the Tories hand on power? Just can't, because they've got their demographic of voters did this on Brexit for themselves, but since then they haven't really had a cohesive demographic that's doing anything really. I think when I see social media, I can imagine our demographic being able to put pressure on Labour, and if we withdraw support, screwed. Now the aim here would be change them on power and propaganda and income issues, resulting in a far left social democracy, not a far left communism or anything, far left social democracy. Resulting UBI, restructured deal for NHS workers, all based on the percentage of average incomes, akin to Scandinavia's Nordic model, except modernised for AI UBI reasons. 3, I would like an historical inquiry with lie and sharp teeth into historical corruption from the national print press, resulting in putting the rags out of business, just like what happened to the News of the World. Yeah, they went out of business spectacularly, didn't they? It was a rare success. But don't think that rare success of the News of the World going out of business means they've got something since 1945. I'm thinking of something positive. We just have a positive cooperative society. Now, the cabinet and PM under this new world that I'm talking about would feel irrelevant and weak, as power would have been extracted from them by the people rather than being extracted from them by a self-serving billionaire or news media. This would equate to the withering away of the state as we know it. Now, when I went on about why haven't they democratised and reformed the state? Well, I admit that if they had, it would result in this, what I'm saying here, but it would be done in a more effective way rather than the people having to force them on social media. It'd be done more in a more mature way because the state are the ones who've been immature by making it so they won't give up power, and this has to be done to force their hand. It's predictable, though, I admit. It's predictable that it has to be done this way because I don't expect the state to act I'm not being sarcastic, I don't expect the state to be mature. Sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. Just have a little break to see Bean. There you are, Bean. Sorry, I wasn't meant to, I shouldn't have said her name. Disturbed her a bit. Yeah, that's a picture. Isn't she a little cutie? Was on holiday with her the other week. I would sleep on one bed, she would sleep on the other. She's brilliant for the night, doesn't make sound. But she'd get up at 6 o'clock every morning. And they've got a body clock, obviously. Right, back to the what I was discussing before. What we don't want a vehicle. Not only do I not want a political party as a vehicle for the working class, I also do not want a newspaper or a TV news channel as a vehicle. All we need is solidarity, cooperation, and so forth. The rest of it is propaganda, power and control, stuff like money, profit. So yeah, I'm a modern day Tolstoy. And we might have to give up some of the economic um, powerhouse sort of attitude we have because climate change might render this sort of consumption, consumerism impossible to be sustained. And look, how about this? We prefer cooperation to divide and rule and superiority, inferiority, and doing people down. I prefer to get on. When you see people in the street, you don't try to blooming verbally beat them up. So, like the vast majority of working and middle class people support the end of the divide and rule politics. Therefore, it's the vast majority of working and middle class's duty to end divide and rule politics because no one's going to do it for us. It's just a case of like we all want we virtually all want the NHS to do well. We want money to make sure that it's free at the point of use. Same as education, certainly for 4 to 16-year-olds. Um, and I think that we'll never ever destroy income poverty unless we actually give people income. It sounds like so obvious, but I mean, it's it's like there's propaganda there. I try to make it not obvious. It's like you can't have Christmas presents without being given Christmas presents. That's the sort of logic, and it's true, isn't it? You can't have Christmas presents without having Christmas presents. You can't destroy poverty, income poverty, without giving people income. It's the same logic. can't have free healthcare without making it free healthcare. I'm sure there's silly crazinesses in the US talk about free healthcare. How it. Oh yeah, they'll say, oh, it's not free because the taxpayers pay for it, but it's free at the point of use. You see, that sort of game. You can imagine that being played in the States. And it's the same for 16-year-olds free education that you get in the States. Yeah, she's sleeping. Yeah, in the States, you have free education for 16-year-olds. No one says, oh, it's not free. Not really free. People know that the reason why they don't say it on education is because they've had it for so long, and they think, well, of course, we have to have free education at the point of use because otherwise we'd have millions of Americans that are illiterate and have no opportunity whatsoever. They've accepted that principle that all Americans should have the possibility, the opportunity to get some education at least, and that's like just so normalised now. They don't attack that as communism or anything. A word on Tolstoy. He said when the news media was starting up, print newspapers, he slagged it off, saying that tabloids they'll be provocative and they'll cause division in society, etc. I think it's been proven exactly 100% right in Britain, at least. So I like that. I mean, I like what he said. And yeah, I think we need to get away from this crazy world, get back to a more of a simple life. So yeah, I think I'm Tolstoyan, whatever that whatever the phrase is to be pro Tolstoy. Because I just think our world's going nuts, it's going crazy, and I just think that what I'm saying here is just should be common sense. Should just be common sense. The system we've got with this power mag people are just bonkers. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's unnecessary. They're not. We haven't got a government that's there to help the people. We've got a government that's there to help themselves. Got a state there to help themselves. No power's ever given up power voluntarily, and thus it continues. And some of them would cause the end of the world. Kill us all in a war. They'd have an argument about it first, of course. Like among their own people in Britain. You want to get Russia, well, you should be getting China, and then nuke China or something. And they would nuke us because if you nuke another country, they're going to nuke you, and we are more crazy than they are on war issues. They're quite peaceful, China. They never go on about wanting war with other nations. They're not like North Korea. So yeah, I think we need a more sane world. Same world that does away with silly parties. This is like Monty Python almost having Monty Python, especially as we know for a fact that um, if you're subjected to certain propaganda, then you'll think like this about identification. If you're subjected to this propaganda, you'll think differently. So it's just nuts. It's just crazy. We just need to cooperate because that isn't propaganda. When it's when it's for your class interests, then it's not propaganda. It's not excess. It's not corrupting. It's just your needs. So, for example, you're not getting people who are gay or lesbian are not getting propagandized by Pride, obviously. So it's like that, and You can also give examples of working class opportunities when they were given access to uni. That is not propagandizing the working class, or suffragettes for women. That wasn't propagandizing women, because it's in their interests in each case, in each example I'm giving. Um, but it's propaganda normally what we're getting. What we normally get from news media is definitely normally propaganda, nothing like no clear cut. This is in your interest thing. I wish. So, so I think it's just time we got over this now. It's just like it's gone on too long. It's not the world we live in. Power mad inequality is not healthy. I just think we need to overcome it. We need to do it without power tripping ourselves, without becoming our enemy. That's a common thing. Usually, the right and the left just become the other one. They just claim that they're nothing like them, and then they just become them. And it gets seen by their own side, so that causes a civil war within their own side. You see it now. You see it now. In the Tories, in Republicans, in Labour, you get all mad, all crazy, because all we have to do is cooperate. There's nothing. There's no need for all of this. There's no need for it. It's just to benefit the elite, to have their power and control over us. They cause division among us so that they can then split the working class and split the middle class, and then they can capitalize on that by saying, okay, well, I don't know, vote for us then, and we'll because we agree with you that they're like are really inferior, and that's all for their own power benefit, for their own money. They don't really actually care. Um, So like they don't, they're not actually prejudice themselves, just pretending to be for votes. It's sort of like they start it, they ignite it, they cause it, they benefit from it. The science works. Um, and I think what we have to do in response to that is to end the state, so that people cooperate together and they don't play these power games. See, power games are just corrupt. They're absolutely corrupt. We know that power corrupts. We know we've got to end it, so we should do it. We should just do it. End this silly nonsense once and for all. And I'm really starting to think, who cares about strategies and stuff like that? It's almost their game as well. Once you start being too much like that, then you're playing into their hands. They think, oh yes, another chance for a power game. We can win this. We haven't to play into their hands on any of this. We just have to defeat them, not and not take anything up for ourselves. We take no party up for ourselves. We take no newspaper for ourselves. We take no TV news channel for ourselves, because they're all just would result in us trying to propagandize others for our own power, our own status, our own profiteering. I mean, people who deny this stuff is goes on are absolutely living in a parallel universe. Don't they think that people get like power, like profiteering? And it's crazy. I suppose obviously people who think this isn't going on are precisely the people who are successfully propagandized. The irony isn't lost on me. They are like they're like the proof, but they don't think they are. It's insane. Um, Most people know this, and like if you when you go poll Brits on if the state's corrupt, you're getting figures like 99% saying yes. It's the highest figures I've seen on anything. I think it's higher than do like Christmas. That sort of figure. I think I figure Christmas figure is probably only about 80%. I guess. Um, so yeah, I'm just thinking on the spot now about how far I've got to end all the power mad games. I'd love it. Love to do it. It would be an absolute dream. I prefer it to England winning the World Cup. I prefer it to Christmas Day. I prefer it to England winning the World Cup on Christmas Day. Mm. And I prefer it to coming in mm, no money, but it depends how much money, to be honest. Because in this world we're in, we all need money just to live. I would pay quite a bit. uh, so yeah, like the, having to bloody force Labour to like change their attitudes from the right wing state superstructure, having to force them, it just proves my point that this is all one right wing corruption. We shouldn't have to force a political party that's supposed to be for the working class to be for the working class. But this one big nonsense. It's they're not really a working class party. I mean, Tony Benn put it like this. He said it's not true that the Labour Party is a socialist party. The Labour Party has some socialists in it, but it is not a socialist party. So it's probably closer to the Democrats in the US. And I think the Labour Party now is a nudge to the right of the Liberal Democrats here. Although they're all playing games, so um, but yeah, it's a withering away of the state as we know it that I'm looking for, and towards cooperation. And I just think the best way to do this I can think of is to force the hand, and then hopefully they democratise themselves. Well, ultimately, I want it to be really decentralised, so that capitalism's like non-monopolistic, and that cuts off all the power tripping games. Then you can't have if you don't have billionaires and if you don't have multimillionaires and if you don't have massive news media corporations and TV news networks that are huge, and it gets rid of all the propaganda at a stroke and would become much more cooperative. I think that's what we need. Okay, that would be the new norm. So far away from that. We're so far away. It's so unfortunate. So we start with kicking the Tories out. We then dictate to Labour what they must do because they're not going to do anything progressive if we just let them go on as they want and just be Thatcherised. We launch a historical inquiry in the print press to get rid of them once and for all. Principle of equal voice. See if you haven't got principle of equal voice when you've got a news media that's got megaphones. We we want to be so successful in telling Labour government what to do that the PM and cabinet are basically irrelevant. That's when we get to that stage. That's the withering away of the state because that's the way to do it, to weaken it like this through people power online, not through taking up power themselves. And then in that situation, there's just everything collapses around them in regarding the state superstructure. But it does it by withering away. It doesn't do it by a mass riot, destroying them, and then just get the army out. Anything to protect their own power. So their hand has to be forced. It has to be forced through people putting pressure on them. And just then they'll just like form one bit and then they'll be forced to go further and eventually eventually we get what we want. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I think I've made all the points. One last look.